Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Off the Shelf. Today we are talking girl power. Girl power is our March theme for the 2021 EAPL Reading Challenge. If you're not already reading along with us, there's still time to sign up. You can do that either through Beanstack, the link is in the description, or you can print out the paper form and check them off as you go. Girl power basically for this just means books written by female authors. And that is possibly the easiest thing you can do. So easy. So many books written by women. You can pick anything. Any genre, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, whatever. You can pick anything as long as it's written by women. So I almost felt like I didn't need to make you a video of recommendations, right? Like, you guys got this. I'm going to, though. I picked a handful of books for you that I'm going to talk about. There's a couple, maybe it's my brain today, but there are a couple that I cannot wrap my head around what these books are about. So bear with me if I struggle a little bit on a few of these, okay? But first, we're going to start with The Perfect Guests by Emma Rous. And this is a thriller. I am not 100% sure if it's one of those where the beginning takes place in one time and then you fast forward to another time for the rest of it, or if it goes back and forth. But basically, in 1988, a 14-year-old orphan was brought to Ravenhall, which is a manor house in England, to be a companion to the family's daughter that lives there. And the girls hit it off, they become great friends, it's all good. And then the family asks the girl to do them a favor, and things take a turn. Then in 2019, you have a struggling actress who is offered a job as a character in a guest at a weekend party, basically, at this manor house. And she is sent clothes and a dossier with all the information on her character, and she shows up and things go sideways. It's super twisty, and there's just a lot going on in this. So if you're looking for a really twisty thriller, then definitely check this one out. Next, we have The Witch of Painted Sorrows by M.J. Rous. This one is set in Belle Epoque, Paris, and the main character flees New York and a dangerous, abusive husband to go and stay in Paris with her grandmother. But when she gets there, her grandmother's like, no, it's dangerous here, you shouldn't be here. She ignores that. She's like, no, it's great, we're all good. And she meets this man, and they start to spend a lot of time together. She's an artist, and with him she's developing her painting and her art, and as time goes on, things are getting darker in her life. Something sinister is kind of taking hold in her life, and eventually we discover that is because she has been possessed by a 16th century courtesan and witch. So that's no good. I will tell you, when I read this book, I really enjoyed it. But then when I got to the end, I thought I had skipped like 3 pages. And I went back and was like, wait, what? No. And I looked again, and no, that was right. So I finished the book a little bit confused. If you've read this book and you had a similar experience, please let me know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. If you're into witches and, Paris and art and all that jazz, definitely check out this book, and then come and tell me what you think of the ending, because I need to know if it's just me. But it's a beautiful book. It's a lot of, well, I don't want to say it's fun, but it's an entertaining read. Then we have The Schroeder Girl by Laurel Brett, which is set in 1960s New York. The main character is a behavioral psychology professor, and he wants nothing to do with all of the changes that are coming in the 1960s. He's He's just, nope, that's not happening. That's not for him. But then he goes to a bookstore and meets this woman, Daphne, who he's immediately intrigued by her, and she evolves and starts to develop multiple Daphnes. And so now he's obsessed with figuring out what's going on here. And we're left wondering, does she have multiple personalities within one Daphne? Or is there something like, semi-magical happening where there's different realities and each Daphne is from a different reality? You don't know. So if that sounds intriguing to you, definitely check this book out. I think it sounds really interesting, and it will make you question everything you thought you knew, right? Then we have The Forest of 1,000 Lanterns by Julie C. Dow, and this is about a young woman, a beautiful young woman, and it's set in, they don't say China, but it's a magical place that's reminiscent of China. And the cards have foretold that she's going to be empress. She's not royal, she's poor, but beautiful. And the only way for her to actually become empress and embrace her fate is to also embrace the darkness that is within her. And it is a dark form of magic offered to her by a god who wants her to embrace it because it in turn gives him power. So you gotta see what happens with that. It's the first book in a series, so if you read this one and you're like, yeah, that was amazing, I need to know more, there's more. But definitely, if you're into dark magic, witches, cruel ants, apparently, then definitely check this one out. All right, this is the one I had the most trouble with, y'all. It's The Dragonfly C by Yvonne Adiambo Awar. I'm not sure. And it's a coming-of-age story set initially on an island off the coast of Kenya, but there's a lot going on in this book. Just the description alone talks about how a mysterious man comes and the main character finds a father figure in him, but as she grows up, a lot of things change, and there's just like so much. There's so much. Like, I could read you this whole thing. You don't want me to sit here and read this to you. I could. But basically, it's a coming-of-age story in Kenya and China and the Far East, and it's according to most of the reviews that I read, it's just beautifully written, very lyrical writing. So if that's kind of what you're looking for, literary fiction with just gorgeous writing, then definitely give this one a shot. And then come and tell me what it's actually about, because I don't know. I can't tell. But it's a beautiful book. It sounds good. I just can't tell you what it is. I can't tell you about this one because I've read this one. This is Happily Ever Afters by Elise Bryant. This is a YA romance. For some reason, my camera hates the coloring on this one. This is about a girl who loves romance stories but has never really been able to find people who look like her in romance stories. So she writes them herself, and she only lets her best friend read them. But her mother takes a couple of her stories and submits them to an art school that has a creative writing program, and she gets accepted. So she's excited, terrified, all that stuff. to go and get school credit for writing. But when she gets there, she has writer's block. She can't write anything. She doesn't know what to do. And her friend says, oh, the way to solve this is that you need to live out your own romance story. So they set up all these steps. And I'm sorry, the color is just like really funky. But they set up all these steps that she needs to follow in order to live out her own romance to kickstart her creativity again. And they decide that the most handsome guy in school is her Prince Charming. And as she goes through all of these steps, she's getting further and further away from who she actually is and what she actually wants in life. So obviously, it's a romance. Things are going to work out okay in the end. But if you're looking for a sweet romance, a sweet YA romance, especially one with a diverse cast, then this is definitely one to check out. I picked this one for you entirely because of the title. There's no way to read this title and not say it all snarky. It's Wow, No Thank You by Samantha Irby. And it's a collection of essays. She is very humorous, very self-deprecating, and a lot of it has to do with turning 40, moving to super white suburbs in the Midwest with her wife and her stepchildren, and everything that all of that entails, while also having to travel to LA for meetings and stuff, and the juxtaposition between herself and the people then in LA who also do not look like her. So I think if you like Jenny Lawson's books, The Blog S, I think that you'll enjoy this. But yeah, the title is the reason that I picked this book for you guys. Definitely check this out if this is something that you're interested in. This one's a little bit of a cheat. There are 3 authors on this one, and only one of them is a woman, but I had to share it with you because I was like, that sounds awesome. This is Science and Cooking, Physics Meets Food, From Homemade to Haute Cuisine by Michael Brenner, Pia Sorensen, and David Weitz. And the book is based on the Harvard course that is offered that explores food through science and why recipes work from a scientific perspective. And that sounds fascinating and kind of mind-boggling to me, because obviously we understand that certain flavors work well together, and that when you melt sugar it becomes caramel, like all of that sort of stuff, like you get that. But this really explores the science behind it, the physics and the chemistry behind why recipes work the way they do. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you're a little bit of a science nerd, definitely check this out. Because come on, how cool is that, right? And I have one more for you. This is The Radium Girls by Kate Moore. It became a movie a couple of years ago, which I think may be out streaming somewhere. I'm not 100% sure. I feel like I've seen it recently, streaming somewhere, but don't quote me on it. Radium is a radioactive substance that was discovered by Marie Curie. And she won the Nobel Prize for her work with radioactivity in, I want to say it was 1911. But when she discovered radium, it was really touted as this sort of wonder element, and they put it in everything. It was in makeup, you could take it as a supplement, they made radioactive underwear for people to wear. I'm not sure what the health benefit was supposed to be of this. Obviously, we know now that radioactivity is not great for you, but in the early 20th century, it was really touted as this just marvel. And this book follows the story of the girls who painted the faces on glow-in-the-dark watches. Obviously, being able to look down and see what time it is in the dark is always going to be helpful, but especially going into World War I, the ability to do that in the trenches was huge. And the people who painted these faces, the numbers and everything on the faces, were young women, and they would come home from the factories just covered in radium dust, which already not great, but they glowed and they sparkled and they were ethereal looking. But they also would take their paintbrushes and stick the tips in their mouths and lick them to get a really nice fine point in order to paint, more precisely. And that led to lots of health issues. The owners of the factories tried to gaslight them when this was brought to their attention and say, well, it's not the radium. Obviously, it's not the radium. You all have syphilis. That's what's going on here. You're all loose women with syphilis, and we have nothing to do with any of that. And we know that's not true. It was the radium. A lot of them suffered just debilitating illnesses as a result of that. And eventually, all of this did lead to changes in labor laws and such. But this book is a history of all of that. So if that interests you, absolutely check it out. I'm a big history nerd, so I want to know all about all of that, more than I already know. So I definitely want to read this book. I've been wanting to read it since it came out. But yeah, if that interests you, check it out. That's what I've got for you today. Like I said, girl power, the easiest theme in the history of the world. Pick any book written by a woman, any of these or anything else. It's super easy. If you are looking for more recommendations, you can always submit a personalized recommendation request form through our website, eastonpl.org. You can also check out our new blog, Off the Shelf, which has different types of book recommendations. One of the more recent ones is 5 series to read if you enjoyed Bridgerton. So I'm going to leave you with that for now, and I will see you again soon.